Brighton's recent Premier League run under Fabian Hürzeler has raised real questions. One win in 10 games, performances that split opinion, and a fan base that is increasingly divided. So is this just a rough period in a long season, or are there deeper issues starting to show? In this video, I'm breaking down Brighton's situation under Hürzeler and what it means going forward. Welcome back to the Louis Selling YouTube channel. I am back once again after the Fletcher-Holman tactical analysis. A bit of a different video for you today. Not really talking tactics or any analysis. We're going to be discussing Fabian Hürzeler, a manager who has had a lot of criticism from fans in recent weeks and months. And this debate all started, especially this week, from a statement that was released by Andy Naylor that said there is no diminishing faith on Fabian Hürzeler from the Brighton board. Rather, they are irritated by a fraction of the fan base pushing the idea that his job is on the line, especially if performances don't improve. That has been a big talking point on Brighton social media this week. But we're going to start with aim versus expectation. Two words that have caused a lot of conversation and people have been getting confused about and mixing them up. I think first it is important to define what these two things mean to get a good understanding and really highlight what each thing means. So aim is simply having the intention of achieving something. An expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case. They're relatively similar. There is a few distinct differences. You intend to do something or achieve something with an aim doesn't mean you are going to do it. You want to do it, but it doesn't mean you are going to do it. Whereas expectation is a strong belief that is, this will happen, this needs to happen. So in Brighton's case, the expectation will probably be, realistically, a top 10 finish and fighting for Europe. And an aim will be exactly what Tommy Watson and Karim Matoma and Tony Bloom as well have stated in pre-season and over the last few weeks. That is top 5, a very realistic aim, not something they expect to happen. Whereas a lot of people have been talking about and taking these interviews slightly out of context and saying the players have said it, they are expected to finish top 5, which is certainly not the case. Because if you think about it, if you're finishing top 5, you have to finish above one of Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Tottenham. Yes, I know they've been really poor recently. Liverpool, Newcastle and Aston Villa. If you are expecting to finish above some of those teams, then you are a very, very ambitious person, and there is a good chance you'll be disappointed come the end of the season. Having an aim to do that and believing you can finish above them is very realistic, and I think you can think that, but expecting it is a whole other kettle of fish, especially with how tight the league is this season. Brighton currently sit in 12th, 6 points off 6th place, which is not a disaster at all. If they were sitting in 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th, 7th, 6 points off that 6th position, I don't think as many people would be concerned in terms of how the table looks. 10 points off 18th, just highlight how tight it is. Not close to the bottom, but not as far away as some fans would like. But a win tomorrow against Everton could take Brighton from 12th to 8th. So it's just really, really tight. And going back to that point about the aim of wanting top 5, they're only 7 points off 5th place, which again isn't a disaster, and I think many people would have taken at this stage in the season. But that is just an aim versus expectation, quick summary, just so people can understand why this video is being made, as a lot of people, as I said, have been getting those two things mixed up, and that has caused a lot of criticism and debate on Hürzeler, because if you're looking at the table simply as it is, being in 12th and wanting 5th isn't a great look. no doubt about that. But we'll talk about the reasons Hürzeler should get some criticism, shouldn't get some criticism, and another point at the end is a lot of people comparing Roberto De Zerbi and Hürzeler. But the first point here, we'll talk about money. Brighton have the 5th lowest wage bill in the Premier League. They're only above Brentford, Bournemouth, Burnley and Leeds. I think that is a really, really important thing to look at if you're expecting a top 5 finish, having a 5th lowest wage bill in the league. That is quite impressive. Brighton do always play the underdog card, that overachieving will shoot for the stars and will blow everyone out of the water with how amazing we have been and go above that expectation, which is a top 10 finish. On the other side of it, some players in the squad may not be on a big of a wage as they should be in terms of quality, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I suppose. Babis Kostelas, for example, is a great player with big potential. Reportedly on about £40,000 a week, which in the context of the Premier League is not that much money. Players like Matoma probably should be on more money than they are, probably around the £100,000 mark, which is roughly the limit for a Brighton player in recent years, maybe slightly above 120. So there's players in the squad who, if they were given the wage that they could get at a bigger club, like a City, United, Arsenal, for example, Brighton's quality in terms of where they are is definitely a top 10 team, in my opinion. Maybe some differ. Some think it is a top 7 team. Some might think it is a bit lower. But I think realistically, top 10 team is a fair place to put. A lot of the debate has been as well that the Seagulls have spent a lot of money in recent seasons, and they have, no doubt. 200 million in the last window, near enough. Quite a lot the window before, and each season spending more and more money. And you should be getting European football with that money spent, a lot of people are saying, and I mostly agree. But Hürzeler did finish, and Brighton did finish in an 8th position last season, which is a Conference League spot. Just unfortunate that Crystal Palace did win the FA Cup, and the odds of that happening and a team finishing in the bottom half of the table and winning the cup is so slim. So Hürzeler realistically did his job last season, and an 8th place finish, the second highest points tally for Brighton in a Premier League season, is definitely not a failure, and it should be celebrated and viewed as a big achievement for a manager in his first top flight season. And in terms of spending, Brighton have probably spent around the same as other teams in the league, if not less. If you look at the course of their time in the Premier League the last 9-10 years, it's not that much overall. Yes, recently more money has been spent, but a lot of big players have been lost as well. Moises Caicedo, Alexis McAllister, João Pedro, Pervis Estupiñán, massive players who were some of the best players to ever play for Brighton and a key part of the squad. Talking of the squad, this is another big factor in how the team has performed under Fabian Hürzeler. He has been backed. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. He's been given money, he's been given players, and good players as well. I think if you look at the money and the players coming in, some of them have been young players who need time to develop, and big money has been spent on them. Babis Kostelas, £30 million. Stefanos Gimas, £20 million. £50 million on 2 teenagers. You can't expect them to come in and start straight away. Criticism probably should be given slightly to Hürzeler in terms of he hasn't given Kostelas enough minutes in the last few games. He started against Burnley, played really well. Arguably the best striker performance we have seen in recent weeks. He scored a magnificent equaliser against Bournemouth, a bicycle kick, and then was given just 2-3 minutes against Fulham in a game where Brighton were on top, equalised, then needed to bring attackers on. Hürzeler perhaps doesn't use his squad as well as he could. Right back, he's been playing Mats Wiefer there a lot of the season. He's been solid, but it's clear that the team perform better when there is a proper right back there in Joel Veltman. Wingers as well, he's been playing Diego Gomez out on the left or the right quite a lot, or Gruder on the right. Both are not wingers, they're more central players in my opinion, especially Diego Gomez. Gomez comes under a lot of criticism as well from fans for being really, really poor. Technically, quality-wise, I think he's been okay. Not the best, not the worst, but his hard work, his drive, his determination, and his pressing and his work off the ball have been one of the best, if not the best, this season. And Brighton have a much better record when he starts. But it does feel like sometimes HURZELER does shoehorn players into the team. Weaver at right back, Gomez at left wing, the two main ones. Especially when Matoma has been injured. You've got a Tommy Watson there. I know he's young and he hasn't played much Premier League football, but he should be given a chance on that left. Likely to go out on loan in this window in the last couple of days, it seems. But he should have been given a chance on that left wing, and perhaps results would have been better. Maybe they would have been worse. It is just hindsight. In terms of the squad, I don't think HURZELER has been given certain players that he needed. He only has one real right back in Joel Veltman, who is 34 years old. Probably can't play every game week in, week out at that age. Needs to be managed through injuries. There has been times where he should have been playing more, no doubt. But only having him as the main right back option is something that I can sympathise with HURZELER with. Yes, he has Kadioglu, who can play that right back role, but he is his starting left back. So you are left with one right back. You could argue Maxim de Kuyper at left back. I don't think he's that great defensively, and he's been exposed many times this season. I think he's much better on the wing, and HURZELER has tried him on the wing, and he's looked slightly better. But on those fullback positions, I don't think he's been given the players he needed, especially for his system. And that was the same under the Zerbi as well. Brighton have had a fullback problem. They've had a very good starting left back, not much as a backup, and then just Veltman on the right. Moving up to the striker position as well. The starting striker this season has been Danny Welbeck, who is 35 years old and never scored more than 10 goals in a Premier League season. He's an exceptional player and has been really good at the start of this season. But he's had many, many injury problems throughout his career, and given him as his main and kind of his only striker was a big issue going into the season. The backup was Stefanos Gimas, and if you know me, you know I absolutely adore him, and I think he's going to be an absolutely brilliant striker and will be a player that scores many, many goals for Brighton and go on to a top team. But having him as the backup striker in his first Premier League season, his first season in a top flight season, played in the Bundesliga 2 last season, just come back from an injury, has now got another injury, which we'll come on to in a moment. But having a young teenager as the backup, that is still a lot of pressure on him, and there's also a lot of pressure on Welbeck to stay fit and perform. Yes, there's Jorginho Rutter, who can play up front, definitely not his best position. HURZELER needs him in that number 10 position. Same with Kostelas, has played well up front, but in my opinion, he is more of a 10. But even if you do put him in that striker bracket, the two backups being two teenagers who, in their first season in the Premier League, that is a lot of pressure on all three of those players. Injuries, if a Welbeck does get injured, that would have left Gimas to lead the line, and that is even more pressure on a young player when it is just not needed. Aaron Connolly, Evan Ferguson, great examples of those. Aaron Connolly hit the ground running in his first game against Tottenham, scoring a brace. Looked a great player. A lot of pressure was put on him to score, and he dropped off. He had a lot of issues off the field. A lot of credit goes to him for talking about those issues while at Leyton Orient, but a lot of pressure on him caused a lot of problems. Evan Ferguson, a lot of pressure was put on him up front, got a few injury issues, lacked confidence after that and couldn't get back in the team. Now on loan at Roma and hasn't been doing too well. Wingers as well, I spoke about. Matoma, Minte, Brighton's two starting wingers. Tommy Watson as the backup, a similar story to the striker situation. Adingra was sold. A lot of fans didn't rate him, but he was still a solid option. I have no problem with moving Adingra on and bringing Tommy Watson in, but you need another winger as well. And if you've got to give him minutes, as I said, Hürzeler should be criticised for that. Give him a few more minutes than he has been, especially in the Cup. There was a few games he could have started where he didn't. Playing players out of position has also been a big problem this season. Whether that was forced or whether that was Hürzeler doing it intentionally, both are issues. Criticism for intentionally playing players out of position. We've looked so much better with players in position. Weaver at right back. He played okay, but he's definitely a midfielder. Gomez at left wing. Played okay. Definitely a central player. Gruder on the wing. Definitely a central player. Jorginho Ruta up front. Definitely a deeper player. It's just a really strange decision. In the midfield as well, Yasna Yari, Jack Hinshelwood, two great players, but having them as a pairing on a few occasions this season has been a really bad decision. Some of them were forced, which I have sympathy for. If your striker's getting injured and two of your strikers getting injured and you haven't got a natural replacement, you're going to have to play someone out of position. Veltman getting injured, you have to play someone out of position as well. So I can see both sides of the argument here. On to injuries. I think this has been another big reason for Brighton's up and down form this season. 17 injuries this season. Weaver, March, Webster, Simas all long term. Matoma as well, mid to long term, has only just come back and he's not 100%. With those injuries, 514 days lost, which is the 5th most in the league. Only Newcastle, Tottenham, Arsenal and Chelsea have had more. So, the teams in and around Brighton that they are competing with has had less injuries, have had more of their squad available. Hürzeler has had to play players that aren't fully fit, and he's had no backups available to replace those players who are injured, which that falls on the board in my opinion. I'm not slating the board, going to go, oh, the board have failed, all of that, like a lot of people do with many other clubs, because Tony Bloom is the best man to ever be involved with Brighton. Brighton would not be where they are without him. He's put millions, hundreds of millions into the club, and he should get absolutely no, not criticism. I think some criticism could come into it, but he should be cut a little bit of slack, in my opinion. Should he have signed a right back for Hürzeler? Yes. Should he have maybe given him a little bit more experience with some players? Yes. Maybe more proven players? Yes, but they come at a cost. So it is a difficult thing to do, but definitely should have given him a right back and maybe another striker. But it does look like Brighton are trying to do that in the transfer market. It is difficult in January. But if you have a lot of injuries, as did De Zerbi, you're going to underperform and you're going to play slightly worse, if not a lot worse. Speaking of De Zerbi, a big thing this season has been Hürzeler versus De Zerbi. You can only be a fan of one, according to a lot of fans on social media. They both have their pros, they both have their cons. De Zerbi's football was entertaining and exciting, for sure. Absolutely no doubt about that. It is more entertaining, it is more exciting than Hürzeler's. But I think Hürzeler's system brings a bit more control and a bit more consistency. We know what we're going to get. It might not be the best, but we're going to be in games most of the time. Apart from the 7-0 against Forest, I can't think of games that Brighton haven't been in with Fabian Hürzeler. Whereas De Zerbi, a 4-0 against Luton, a 4-0 against Manchester City, a 4-0 against Roma. Quite a few games Brighton tried to stay with the De Zerbi way, and they completely got battered when it was obvious they should have tweaked slightly. That's another comparison as well. It was De Zerbi's way or no way, which is a good and a bad thing. He plays his system, players get used to it and they get really good at it. But when it isn't going his way, he doesn't really adapt that much. Hürzeler, on the other hand, adapts. He changes things, which is good because it means Brighton can be in more games. But then I think he changes too often sometimes, which means there is a lack of some consistency sometimes and players can't build those connections. There is a steady progress under Hürzeler, in my opinion. Some fans have disagreed with that, but the points per game is better under Hürzeler than De Zerbi, 1.49 versus 1.39. It's a good stat to look at, but it is not the be-all and end-all. Hürzeler has 3 less wins, 3 more draws, and 9 less losses. Those 9 less losses are a big part of his ability to be in games, control games slightly more, and have that consistent level. Both De Zerbi, Potter had similar runs to Hürzeler. 1 win in 10 runs, runs with no wins, if any wins, maybe a couple in there. And I think Potter and De Zerbi were cut a little bit more slack. And for that that reason is a fan connection. De Zerbi, in my time as being a Brighton fan, the last 12 years, 13 years, 14 years maybe, I can't quite remember how many years, but it's over 10 years. De Zerbi is a manager that has had the most fan connection. Fans adored him. They still do. He was always coming over, celebrating with the fans, going mental on the touchline, which is what you want to see from a manager. Hürzeler is quite the opposite. He does celebrate on the touchline sometimes, but he doesn't really like taking the limelight. He doesn't sometimes come over and clap away fans. Maybe in the middle of the pitch, just a little clap. Nobody can be as over the top as De Zerbi, that is for sure. But I think sometimes you need a little bit more rapport with the fans and a little bit more from Hürzeler in that regard. And I think that is a valid criticism. Potter is kind of a mixture of both. He had a good connection, but he also had a bad connection with some of his comments that he made. But overall, I think there's a steady progress under Hürzeler. It has been a bit up and down. He's a young manager. He's still learning. He does need to learn from some of his mistakes that he did make last season. That is another criticism. He hasn't learned from some mistakes. But he's had a lot of injuries. He's had quite a few times where he's had to play players out of position. He hasn't been able to get the full potential out of his squad for a few reasons. His game management has been really poor, and I think that is a big reason Brighton are where they are this season. But he will learn that. Game management when ahead is poorest. Game management when behind is usually quite good. He's made quite a few good subs that have changed the game this season. Injuries as well played a big impact. Not having certain players brought into the squad has also had a big impact. He does need to improve. There is no doubt about that. I'm not saying he deserves no criticism at all, but I still think he deserves more time. Apparently, he is loved within the club and thought of in very high regard. Yeah, I want to see a little bit more from him for sure, but I do think some of the criticism and the comments have been slightly over the top. If we don't get a top 10 finish, I could see him gone at the end of the season. We will see. Depends how far off Brighton are from the top 10. But where Brighton are and their current progress, their development line, I suppose, they do need to be finishing in the top 10. If Brighton don't get Europe, maybe that's another conversation, but there's a lot of factors and a lot of context as to why that might not be the case. As I said, should be given more time. I do think he will be a top manager, and I do think he needs a couple of more players for his system, as did De Zerbi. Both should have been given a few more players. But I think that is everything about Hürzeler. Some criticism is valid. Some criticism has been blown right out of proportion. Every opinion is fair. If you don't like him and you want him gone, as is the opinion of thinking he will be a good manager. He is a good manager. Needs a little bit more time. But let me know in the comments, Brighton fans, what are your thoughts on Hürzeler? Do you think he should be sacked now? Do you think if we don't finish top 10, he should go? Do you think he should be given more time? Do you think he is a great manager and you don't know what anyone's on about wanting him gone? But that is it. Thanks for watching. I will see you next week for another video. You know the outro by now. Do it with me. Adios.